Welcome back. You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London with me, Brendan Cole. A democratically elected parliament takes over from Libya's transitional government today. Libya's National Transitional Council has ruled the country since Muammar Gaddafi was ousted last October. Last month, Libyans took to the polls where voters chose 200 representatives. The Liberal coalition of wartime Premier Mahmoud Gebreel and his National Forces Alliance performed best, securing 39 seats. But it's a tricky transition. The handover to a freely elected government comes amid violence. Security forces thwarted 3 men planning bomb attacks in Tripoli on Sunday. And in the western city of Misrata, also on Sunday, a residence of the International Committee of the Red Cross was attacked. So what form will democracy take in the new Libya? After today's handover, what will be the priorities for the government, and how will freedom be established in a country that's still hit by violence? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined in the studio by Jason Pack. He's a researcher of Middle Eastern history at Cambridge University and president of LibyaAnalysis.com. On the phone, we have Ahmed Gebreel, who's the deputy head of the Libyan embassy. Also on the phone from Tripoli is Michel. He's the editor-in-chief of the Libya Herald. And also joining me here in the studio is Professor Saad Jawad, fellow at the Middle East Centre at the London School of Economics. Michel Cousins, I'd like to start with you. Your newspaper reported that the NTC chairman, Mustafa Abdel Jalil, was not able to return to the capital for the handover of power. That was due to a quirk of flights being overbooked because of pilgrims going to Saudi Arabia. Can you just tell me the latest on that? And is he going to make it to the capital on time?
Well, I think he'll be making it. I think, in fact, he's probably arrived in Tripoli now because he was hoping to get on a plane. If he couldn't get one last night, he was expecting to be able to get to one this morning at 11 o'clock flight, and he had said to a friend that he was just hoping that it wasn't delayed or cancelled. But I'm pretty sure he'll be there.
Your newspaper was also reporting this morning that it may not simply be a ceremonial handover of power, that the new National Congress possibly might elect a new leader and 2 new deputies. What more can you tell me about that?
Well, the leader that they're thinking of electing is the Speaker of the Congress, the President of the Congress, whatever one wants to call it, but effectively like a Speaker. A lot of members felt that they're coming from all parts of Libya, and to come just for that meeting, for the ceremonial handover, would not be enough. It's Ramadan, of course. We're coming up to Eid. People have got other things on their mind, particularly with Eid coming, they've got other things on their mind. But they felt that they really, having come to Tripoli, all gathered together, that they should do the first thing that needs to be done, which is to elect a leader, a head of the Congress, and 2 assistants. And various people I've spoken to in the last 24 hours have said that will happen today.
Saad Jawad, there's also a proposal coming from Mahmoud Gebreel that there should be a presidential council of 7 members. I mean, what do you make of that?
Nothing is certain about the whole situation now. I think we have to wait and see what happens in the elections inside the council itself, and see who is the dominating power, if there is any, because as it looks now, there is no dominating people or dominating group in the constitution. Only 56 seats are determined really by the Gebreel and the Muslim Brotherhoods, and the others are, between 2 brackets, said to be independent. I think it will be very difficult to say until we know what sort of groups or affiliation these groups have. They have to elect first the president and 2 assistants or two deputies. They have to elect a committee for the drafting of the constitution, and they have to elect a committee or a transitional government preparing for the next permanent elections. Nothing is certain.
Jason Pack, there was some criticism actually that Mustafa Abdel Jalil, who's acting both as chairman of NTC and in effect as head of state, that those roles, those functions should be split in future. What do you make of that?
Yes, they've hit the nail on the head. This is a moment very pregnant in possibility. It's not really a question of not knowing the ideological affiliations of the members of the General National Council by having 120 individual candidate seats. It's not really that they're independents, but that they were not chosen from party lists. This means that you have representatives of many different localities in Libya who, by design, have to form coalitions. The GNC requires a 2/3 majority to to pass anything. New coalitions between what are called incorrectly, moderates and Muslim Brothers and different localities from, say, Misrata to the south are going to work together on issues of how a new cabinet will be formed, who will be the leader or president, and also selecting the Constitutional Committee. To go with what you said of separating the presidential or ceremonial function from the more practical function, I would say that that is not something which is in doubt because, of course, the president of the GNC will be selected from within it, while the prime minister will be selected from outside the body. What seems to be being discussed, maybe choosing one from the east, Cyrenaica, most likely the prime minister, and then having the president be from Tripolitania, the west, whether that would be enshrined or just a one-off deal, that separation is something which would reach out to multiple constituencies, and I think you're going to see that happen.
Professor Jawad.
In theory, this is true, but the truth is on the ground there is a different reality. This assembly, really, nobody knows how much power it has on the ground. On the ground, we have militias, we have groups controlling areas, the transitional government. Now, how much power this assembly will have on the ground and could control the whole Libyan country? This is the question.
Ahmed, Gebreel, how historic is this for Libya?
The election had a very important positive impact on the whole situation in Libya. The elections or the results of the elections enhanced the expectations among the people and raised hope among them. And also, even according to the United Nations report, what's happening in Libya at this moment of a peaceful and democratic transition to the new authority stands well in comparison to any other post-conflict context. In other words, if you compare Libya to other countries who have gone through, between brackets, civil war, the situation in Libya is unbelievable. What's happening in Libya today have done all what they have agreed upon the constitutional declaration. Today we will witness peaceful transitional to the authority to the new elected body. This body has been elected by the people for the first time for the last 4 decades. What we have seen, I think, proves that we are going in the right direction. We have many challenges for sure, and I think the new body will be able to deal with them.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. We're discussing post-revolutionary Libya with Michel Cousins from the Libya Herald, Jason Pack from LibyaAnalysis.com, Ahmed Gebreel, Deputy Head of the Libyan Embassy in London, and Professor Saad Jawad from the LSE. Jason Pack from LibyaAnalysis.com.
To go back to Mr. Gebreel's points, I agree with how well many of the aspects have been going in the transitional period, particularly the elections, but I think it's crucial to call up your initial question. No one does, in fact, know the extent of power that the central government under the GNC will be able to exert. There are many militias on the ground who control most of Libya's territory. Yes, the NTC has done a good job in following its own guidelines in terms of exerting authority, building a national army, building institutions that can actually govern the territory. No one knows how well the GNC will be able to do that. It has some advantages in as much as it's a fully elected body, but that would be the primary question.
I'm very glad to tell you the truth. I'm very glad about what's happening in Libya now, the elections, the success of the elections. But judging by what happened in Tunisia, which was less violent change in the government than in Libya and in Egypt, we can see that in both countries, Tunisia and Egypt, the situation is still uncertain, although the whole institutions, most of the institutions of the government were still there. And in Libya, the violent change have changed everything on the ground, and you have brought new system, new institutions, new army, new everything. And it's very difficult for these to settle down in such a short period. The second thing is, I think, any decision in the council, in the assembly, needs at least 133 votes to be passed. With this, percentages of votes are determined. The others are still fluid. Nobody knows. I don't think they are independent, as to say, but it will be very difficult to take very direct decisions. And the most important thing is for those who have been really ruling Libya since the downfall of Gaddafi until now, are they really prepared to leave the power they have accumulated through these months and the last year, and listen to the elected council or obey the orders of the council or the new government? This is the question.
I'll turn to Michel Cousins from the Libya Herald. There's a few points there, but specifically about the two-thirds majority. Is there a concern in Libya that it's going to be quite difficult, at least in the transitional months? I say transitional, we've already had the transition, but in the months to come, of getting anything done?
On the two-thirds majority, people have been talking to you about this, members of Congress, and they say the two-thirds majority will not be adhered to. They see it as too big a hurdle. I think it'll go out the window by this evening. There is to be a debate about the two-thirds majority. I think it'll be one of the first things they debate. The new Congress can make all the decisions it wants. It's not going to be held by what the NTC decided. It's made that quite clear. And something was mentioned earlier about it having the duty of appointing the 60-member Constitutional Commission. Well, as you may know, just before the elections, the NTC decided to take that role away from the new Congress, and now the Congress is going to take that role back. But the Congress has supreme authority, and they're going to decide lots of things. One of the things they say they're going to decide is whether or not the Prime Minister should be from within Congress or from outside. That's still an open question. They're not going to address that issue of who's the new Prime Minister, who's the new government, probably till after Eid. So one of the things about Libya has been a tremendous success story if you think about it. This was a total revolution. It wasn't like the revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, which were about changing people at the top. It's the complete system that has gone. It is comparable with the Russian Revolution. It is comparable with the French Revolution in that sense of total overthrow. Now, a lot has happened in such a short period of time, and it is quite remarkable what Libya has managed to achieve in having elections in a very, very short period of time since the revolution. And to have got elections carried out, and unlike in other parts of the world where there's tremendous violence when you have elections, they were peaceful. And at the moment, we have this new Congress. It has legitimacy. Unlike the NTC, and the NTC would not make decisions, particularly about disarming various of the militias, which the Congress can and will do. But the issue of security will be addressed. Of that, I'm quite convinced.
Ahmed Gebreel, I just from the Libyan mission in London, he compares it to the Russian Revolution. Do you feel that's a fair comparison?
Definitely, the situation in Libya is different from what has happened in Tunisia and Egypt. Before the international community stood beside the Libyan people, they all had doubt about the Libyan people. Would these people who are not used to democracy, would they be able to form a council or authority to represent them? Would they agree? Would there be a partition in the country? And all this didn't happen. They managed to elect or to support the council, which was spontaneously established in Benghazi at that time, and they supported the council throughout the revolution. Or before Tripoli was liberated, all the people around the world, they said we would see a blood bath in Tripoli, and the situation in Tripoli would be chaos. It didn't happen. Tripoli was freed in 3 days, and the life in Tripoli returned as normal as it was before the revolution. Talking about armed group, it's definitely the most difficult challenges faces the new GNC, but they are not in control of all the country or territory in the country, as some of your speakers have said. I think they control, or they're present in Tripoli and surrounding area, but they are not as powerful as some people think. I think all what we need in Libya is an elected body who would take decisions and have this decision implemented.
So obviously, Jason Pack, you referred to it just before, the difficulty of controlling the entire country. But there is confidence that that can actually happen.
There's great hope. On these issues, I'd have to defer to what's going on the ground to Mr. Cousins, who, along with Sami Zabtia, in creating the Libya Herald, has become the most knowledgeable focalizer in the English language of what's going on the ground. From my kind of more bird's-eye perspective, having only been to Libya twice in the last year, I see that the NTC has passed the buck. They didn't take those difficult decisions. The paradigm I like to use is the center and the periphery. In Libya, the periphery is always strong and the center is weak. That was even true under Gaddafi. It was true under the monarchy of Idris. And now it's more true after the revolution. The center is weak and can't control the different peripheries in Misrata, in Zintan, and in the federalist movement in the east. Hopefully, this new legitimate body is not going to just pass the buck and say, well, we don't want to bother anyone. We don't want to disappoint people. We'll let the militias do this. We'll let the local areas control their sinecures and do local corruption. Hopefully they're going to take super difficult decisions. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. The idea that all of a sudden, magically, the GNC, once they solve these internal questions, is going to assert the writ of their authority. No. Slowly, shwai shwai, as we say in Arabic. Incrementally, the great success of the elections is that legitimacy is vested in the center. So even if it's weak, it's going to be able to increase its power, use its oil wealth to cajole the periphery to participate in these nation-building processes.
Jason Pack uses the word pass the buck. That seems like quite a negative analysis of the efforts of the Transitional Council. Do you see it that way, Professor Saad Jawad from the LSE?
Well, I don't know what to say about this, but I think there are exaggerated hopes about the situation in Libya by some of my colleagues here. I think, judging by what happened in Iraq, for example, after 9 years of the occupation and the so-called liberation of Iraq and the end of Saddam rule, step by step or shway politics did not succeed in Iraq. Now,
the two situations have nothing to do with each other.
Just the same situation. It all depends on the constitution, as I said. Once the constitution is drafted, once we have a look at the constitution, how much power the center is giving to the peripheries, how much power has the center, how the peripheries would accept the constitution and translate it, would they would like to have more powers to deal with their own issues. These things will determine the future of Libya.
Talking about the constitution that you've referred to, Michel Cousins, editor-in-chief of the Libya Herald, what's going to be the focus of the constitution?
Most people that I've talked to seem to want a parliamentary democracy. Certainly it's not going to be a presidential system. Nobody wants to go back to a system where one person is and all his cronies around him are deciding what happens. There are one or two people. For example, the Union for Homeland would like to see the French system brought into Libya, but on the whole, it's not supported. There has been some talk about appointing now a presidential council to be the equivalent of the head of state, not the head of Congress. And there was talk indeed about appointing an interim head of state. The members have said no to that because that's an issue for the Constitutional Commission to decide, and they don't want to preempt it. And secondly, there will be strong decentralization. Now, the word federalism causes lots of problems in Libya at the moment. It's misunderstood, and a lot of people believe federalism means separation. I think that they talk about strong decentralization, which would be Libya being not divided, but you would have strong areas of local government in charge of education locally, healthcare locally, whatever.
And just on the point of Mahmoud Gebreel, he was portrayed in the West as this being a triumph of secularism over religion. Is that how it's seen in Libya itself?
It's a misunderstanding.
How much of a liberal figure is he?
That's a good question. He's prepared to do a deal with the Brotherhood at the moment to get into power. He and the Brotherhood are now talking together, having been arch enemies, because they've realized they can't separately take power, so best take power together. The idea that any of the parties are secularist in the Western concept is a misnomer. all parties know that Libya is a Muslim country. Islam is part of the culture of the country, and that will be reflected in the constitution. It will be reflected in the law. It will not be a Sharia state such as you have in Saudi Arabia.
I'll turn to Ahmed Gebreel from the Libyan mission in London. In a way, the way the West has reported this revolution and subsequent election is in terms of secularism, most Libyans would not be comfortable with the idea of a secular country, would they?
First of all, I think it's a misconception to think of the future of Libya or to link the future of Libya for one person, either Mahmoud Gebreel, with all the respect and all appreciation for the role he played in the revolution. The Libyan people, I think, are very, very clear. They are not for a secular state, but also they are not for a very religious state. They are very moderate people. Almost 100% of the people are Muslim, and they are not going to support religious groups like the Islamic Fighting Group, who formed Al-Watan Party and lost completely in the elections, but also they are not going to support a secular group. So I think the picture is very clear for the Libyan people. It will be a moderate Islamic country like other countries in Turkey or Malaysia.
Jason Pack, well, the rhetoric of religion was, wouldn't say absent from the election campaign, but it was on the back seat. Do you see that kind of language emerging a bit more in the months to come? And
the Western discourse about Mahmoud Gebreel as a secularist, or conversely that Abdul Jalil wanted to have a total Sharia state, is irrelevant. There's enormous consensus on these issues in the ground in Libya. I don't see them as important. If Gebreel and forces like Ali Tarhouni associated with him would achieve more power, they're going to appoint technocrats in the cabinet who are going to be concerned with implementing liberal or neoliberal economic policies, and they're willing to govern socially and compromise on those issues. The super key issue in Libya is not the religious one. It's what Mr. Cousins has mentioned about how decentralization without federalism will come into being, how much power will be devolved to local bodies, and then if too much power is devolved, can there be coherent infrastructural building? Because it's not that Libya was destroyed by the revolution, it's rather that Gaddafi never built Libya. It never had coherent institutions. It never had a national infrastructure. And they're sitting on tremendous potential, not only in oil wealth, but in over 200 billion in sovereign wealth abroad. And the Libyan people have great optimism.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London with me, Brendan Cole. We're talking about the handover of power in Libya. Discussing this is Michel Cousins, editor-in-chief of the Libya Herald, Jason Pack, president of LibyaAnalysis.com, Ahmed Gebreel, who's the deputy head of the Libyan embassy in London, and Professor Saad Jawad, fellow at the Middle East Centre at the London School of Economics. Well, actually, talking about the identity of the country, that's going to be difficult to forge given Libya's history, I suppose, Professor Saad Jawad from the LSE, in the sense that if you look historically, Libya was cobbled together from the remnants of the Ottoman Empire, and a sense of Libyan identity and will be central to the future of the country. Are you confident that that can happen and that can be fostered in the years to come?
I mean, I was surprised to see that, for example, the Muslim Brotherhoods and the Islamic groups did not do that as they wanted to do in the elections. That shows the mentality of the Libyan people. The whole thing is how the drafters of the constitution, what they have in mind. Because once you say that no law should be drawn which contradicts with Islamic Sharia, you always subvert the whole constitution, no matter how much liberties you put in this constitution, because any religious leader could say that this law is against the Sharia, this liberty is against the Sharia, and it could go down and will be annulled, and nobody could do anything about it. So I think how secular the people who are going to draft the constitution, how much power and how much modern ideas they have in their mind. And I think the question of the center and the federal or the other periphery areas, the relations between the two should be determined very carefully. Otherwise, you will have a very difficult situation.
Ahmed Gebreel, I'll turn to you. You were there also under Gaddafi. How has the culture within Libya's diplomatic corps changed?
The foreign ministry under Gaddafi worked there for 15 years. I can tell you that most of the people, as any other people, as ordinary people in the streets, we're not happy with Gaddafi. We're not happy with his policy. If you remember, at the beginning of the revolution, diplomats around the world defected in the very first week and joined the revolution. Our whole mission to the United Nations in New York, our whole embassy in Washington, in Paris, in other countries, in Egypt. So as people, they were always unhappy with Gaddafi, and the first they had the chance, they defected and they supported the revolution. Now we didn't see much change as personnel in the foreign affairs. We have the same people who worked under Gaddafi are still working under the new state, and few of them who joined or who supported Gaddafi during the revolution have been suspended, and they are going to face the court.
And what would be the main tasks for the Libyan embassy in London? There's controversy obviously still ongoing over the shooting of Yvonne Fletcher. There's the Lockerbie bombing aftermath, of course. What about locating Gaddafi's assets overseas? I mean, there's a lot on the agenda for the Libyan mission, isn't there?
Yes. With regard to Yvonne Fletcher, I think tremendous improvement or agreement have been reached between the two governments. Representatives from the British police have arrived to Libya, and they are working with their counterparts in Libya on this case. Lockerbie, I think it's more complicated and it requires more time, because there was an agreement reached with Gaddafi's regime, and we want to see how can we implement justice and at the same time not to disregard that agreement. With regard to the assets, we are working with the British government, and also the Libyan government created a new body that deals with Libyan assets abroad. There have been some success story here in London and other countries. And I think the assets, it's a very complicated issue, because we have three kinds of assets. We have assets that belong to the country abroad, and these assets are frozen, or some of it are frozen, but it's safe. We are not worried about it because it belongs to the state. No one can touch it. We have the other assets who belong to the state but managed or stolen by other people, and we need to recover these assets. And this is more complicated because there are some companies abroad involved and people who left or fled the country after the revolution. The third one is assets belong to some Libyan officials who also left the country, and we believe these assets are unlawfully taken from the Libyan people, and we also need to work with other governments to recover this asset.
Michel Cousins, editor-in-chief of the Libya Herald. Do the people of Libya have confidence in their new leaders?
I think the answer to that is yes. People are very proud of having had the elections. They're waiting to see what happens, who becomes leader of Congress, who becomes prime minister, who eventually will become head of state. But they are, on the whole, yes, there are a few people who are worried about where things might go, but I would say the vast majority of people are very, very happy, and they feel that Libya is moving in the right direction. I think Libya is going to become a very powerful voice in the Arab world as a result of this, because Libya is rich, and Libya will have a moral voice in the Arab world and in the Muslim world.
Well, we'll leave it on that note. So I'd just like to finish by thanking all my guests. Michel Cousins, editor-in-chief of the Libya Herald, Jason Pack, researcher of Middle Eastern history at Cambridge University, and Ahmed Gebreel, who's the deputy head of the Libyan embassy here in London, and Professor Saad Jawad, fellow at the Middle East Centre at the London School of Economics. Thank you for joining me here on The Voice of Russia.